Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of the Bulldog Alley podcast. It is Tuesday, May 31st. I am your co-host, Cole Forsman, joined as always by Asher Ali.
What's up, Cole?
Not much, Asher. How about you? How's life going?
Life's going, man. We're almost getting this. It's definitely summer out here. Back in Spokane. I think that it was still kind of light outside at like 9 p.m. last night, which was like crazy. I was like, whoa, like this is so different than those like 4:30 days you have in the winter. I think just get real dark quick. But no, I'm loving it, and it's baseball season. Drafts coming up, so it's definitely summer is here, and I'm ready for it.
Yeah, summer vibes are in full force. It's sunny. It's 75 degrees outside. So let's just get right into it. Big news today out of Zags basketball. Rasir Bolton announced that he's going to withdraw from the NBA draft and return for his 5th year of eligibility at Gonzaga. Huge news. He started all 32 games last year, was a big part in that Sweet 16 run. He led the WCC three-point field goal percentage at 46%, averaged just over 11 points per game, all conference honorable mention. Kind of a sneaky under the radar move in the grand scheme of college basketball, but for the Zags team, definitely huge. What are your sort of thoughts on that and how the roster is shaping up now?
Yeah, it's a pivotal move for him to come back to Gonzaga for sure, because we were looking at when all 5 of Gonzaga starters from last season had declared, and he was the last of them to declare on April 27th, I believe. We were not quite sure. I mean, we knew what the backcourt was going to look like if all of the guards had left, and we knew that Nembhard was out the door already just because of how those things work with eligibility and declaring for the draft. But we looked at the backcourt, and it was like it's Hickman, Hunter Salas, and it's Dominic Harris, and we see that and we're like, oh wow, that's so much talent and potential right there, but not a ton of experience. Like the most experienced guard out of all of them at the collegiate level is Hickman. He's still only going into his 2nd year. So to return a guy like Hickman, to return somebody like Bolton, who has now 4 years under his belt, is heading to his 5th, a rangy 3-point shooter who, wasn't the most active on ball player, I would say, for Gonzaga last year, but he knows the game. Like he knows the game so well. His ability to spot up in the right areas and find openings is quintessential to Gonzaga's offense. So to return that ability is crucial for the Zags. It's unfortunate just because I don't think Bolton's draft prospects maybe look the best going into this year, but I think it was definitely more kind of a feel it out, kind of see where do we fit in the scheme of getting drafted maybe for next season. So I think that was kind of something to get the temperature for Bolton for next year, how it looks for him, and I think it looks good. I think if he returns and maybe is a little bit more aggressive on ball and is willing to take the ball up more and improve his strength, handling and things like this. The 3-point that it's a 3-point game at the NBA level now, so it's definitely essential that he locks down a few more skills and proves that he's learned things, and both that will but doing so will both help Gonzaga next season a lot, and then also his draft stock too. So I'm excited to see where he goes from here.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up him as a ball handler, because he wasn't really asked to do that last year, of course, with Andrew Nembhard on the roster. But it's interesting because Coach Field loves his experienced guards, guys who are smart, who know how to take care of the ball, and that is Rasir Bolton. But we'll see if his duties increase this next year with as you mentioned, a lot of inexperience in the backcourt. And I think that's that final step for him, I think, as a prospect as well, to be able to handle the ball. It's someone at his size who doesn't jump off the page from his athletic profile. But we know he could shoot. He was a plus defender last year as well for his size. Last year, one of the most efficient players in all of college basketball. A lot of that had to do with, comparatively from him at Iowa State, where he literally had to do everything. The last year, he's playing with one of the most talented rosters in the country. Just so, that usage rate kind of went down. He became much more efficient. it showed that he is a smart player. So I think it's obviously huge for the Zags to have that leader in the backcourt now still. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Of course, today is 24 hours before the June 1st deadline for all players to sort of withdraw from the draft. So we still haven't heard any official word from the other Zags, that being Drew Timme, Julian Strother, and Andrew Nemhard. But all of them have sort of, we're getting close to figuring it out. They've kind of made some moves on social media. And of course, in this age, we all love to sort of speculate just based on who's posting what and when. So Drew Timme earlier, he posted something like with Northern Quest that, alluded to him possibly staying in the draft process. And then Julian Strother has done a bunch today. He changed his profile picture to LeBron James making the decision, sort of alluding to him having to make a decision by tomorrow. And then we both figured out that he kind of cleared out his Twitter. It looked like, at least most recent tweets. So who knows what's going on there. But yeah, those three will be big to watch in the next 24 hours.
Yeah, Timmy's it's wild that, I'm looking at this post here, and it's one of those collaborative Instagram posts with Northern Quest and him and himself. And he's, he says right here, he goes, it's from Northern Quest. It says, "Congratulations are soon to come, Timmy. You are a beast." With 3 exclamation points. So, that he really is a beast. And they say your Northern Quest family will always cheer you on. So that surely, has the mentality in the air of like, hey, you're out the door, you're moving on past Spokane, you're going on to the NBA, you're going on the league, which is great for him. We did get to talk a little bit in last episode about his combine performance, and it was kind of an up and down sort of there was more of a down and up. It started down and then finished on a really good high note for him. So you have to assume that at least how this post is leaning, that he's looked ahead enough and been like, hey, I project well enough in the draft. Whether it's a late second round, maybe a mid second round, an undrafted free agent signing, he feels pretty confident about his prospects. But he just had to squeeze in one more NIL kind of deal before it was all said and done with Northern Quest. So, and I don't blame him at all for it either. That's, get your money, brother. Like do that all the way. Strother was on kind of a social media tear here for a second, changing, and the decision, we think about the decision, that was a big change in LeBron's career, right? That was him moving from Cleveland to Miami. So what does that mean now for Strother? Does that mean a big change is coming for him as well? We have within the next 24 hours, we're going to find out. And then he was like, man, it's already May 31st. And he was tweeting on the stuff, and then boom, he clears all of it. And so it's kind of like we kind of got like this quick little radio silence from him, but we know that he's going to, in the next day, we're going to find out what these guys are up to. And it's pivotal for Gonzaga, especially in the guard room, for Strother, because, we also, I think this June 1st period with how it's going down nowadays and NIL and all this kind of stuff, that's after June 1st, you're going to see a proliferation of athletes also declaring or also like announcing where they're going to transfer to. I know there's that one player from Chattanooga that's like quietly kind of under the radar going to be a Zag transfer perhaps, and we'll see how that goes. But, we haven't really heard much about guards wanting to come to Gonzaga. Well, actually, that's a lie. There's a Texas Tech guard. But outside of that, we haven't really heard much. So getting Strother back, and that's the same experience that Bolton brings back to the program too. So we just got to keep an eye out and see what happens.
Yeah, that Chattanooga player, Malachi Smith, heavily rumored to eventually be a Zag, but just like the rest of the process, it's all speculation right now. Unfortunately, guys didn't make their decision well in advance, like Rasir Bolton and other guys across the country. So we'll keep an eye on that and certainly have our reactions and takes all on that for next week's episode. But we're going to shift gears here. Actually, well, there was another basketball thing that happened today. Guy got lost in the shuffle. Zags versus Bears rematch in Sioux Falls, where we all expected it to be.
Rematch
Rematch of 2020. Oh yeah, for sure. It'll be the Zags' second time playing there. They played Iowa there back in 2020, which coincidentally was when those two schools, Zags and the Baylor Bears, were supposed to meet up. But of course, that was during the COVID-19 season, so things kind of got thrown in chaos there. But they're going to be squaring off the regular season finally, so should be a fun one to watch. Of course, both rosters look completely different from that game, but both fan bases still hold that game, of course, in high regard. So it'll be a fun one to watch December 2nd. So yeah, that'll be fun. Of course, we're loading up on our non-conference schedule as always.
Yeah. Baylor is also going to be a totally different look next year, even from this past season. I know we didn't face Baylor this last year, but they were a totally different look. I know Mayer transferred, and I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. What's the name of the guy with the pink hair?
Yeah.
He's like a really shoot. I should have that name locked in. But they like in just Baylor has some really talented players who are going out the door for one reason or another, and we got to see what they look like going next year. But it's going to be a highly touted matchup. I'm sure it's going to be primetime ESPN game. Yeah, like you said, in beautiful, and Sioux Falls is really pretty, but in beautiful Sioux Falls, and I'm really excited just to see how these two teams match up, 2 years after after the national championship game. It'll be, I think it'll be a good like litmus test for both squads as far as like, hey, like where do they match up? Mark Few loves to have, and him and Scott Drew both love having a really competitive non-conference schedule. So, it'll be really cool to see where both teams stand going into conference play after that. But yeah, that news definitely fell a little bit behind today, behind everything else. But don't fall asleep on the Zach schedule for next year. It's going to be really, really tough and really, really fun to watch.
Yep. Oh, for sure. One more storyline to follow. I'm sure former BYU forward Caleb Lohner, now with Baylor, is happy that the game is at least not in Spokane, because we all know the last one went for him. But that's a fun storyline to keep an eye on as well for that game. So now we'll shift gears to the Diamond. Big week for Zags baseball. They had the WCC tournament just a few days ago over the weekend. They had 3 games. They kicked off the first one. Of course, had the first round bye, and they waited for LMU on, I believe it was Friday they played, or sorry, Thursday. Absolutely destroy the Lions 16-2. 5 Zags hit a home run. And crazy game. But then they moved on to play USD in the semis on Friday. Despite having a 3-0 lead early on, they just couldn't keep USD's high-powered offense off the board late in the game. Toreros came back, won that game 5-3, which bounced the Zags down to the elimination bracket, where they actually played second seed Portland, who also lost to USD in the first round. Or I'm sorry, they lost to USD and then beat LMU. So they were still in that elimination area. Zags beat them 7-0 to face off against USD in a rematch in the championship game. They needed a win, at least one, to force a third game to decide the championship. Unfortunately, though, they fell to the Toreros once again, this time in extra innings, just back and forth. Both teams, right from the get-go, were putting runs up on the board. Zags led 10-7 heading into the 8th inning, but the Toreros just racked up 6 runs in that frame. 5 came against GU's Alec Gomez. Caden McGee had a solo home run with 2 outs, cut the lead to 1 in the 8th. Then Ezra Samperi came in, RBI single, pushed the game into extras, but wasn't enough. USD had hit 2 home runs in the 11th inning, and that sort of just sealed the fate for the Zags, who finished up second in the conference in that tournament. But what'd you think of the WCC tournament as a whole? Sort of a sort of back and forth from the highs and just coming up short.
Yeah, I think the scariest thing about the entire tournament was ranking USD third in the conference going in. That just gave them that big old chip on their shoulder, like, because USD, they are like, that's a really talented team. And even, and we, Gonzaga won that series, just a couple of weeks ago against them in the regular season. But USD is, man, they are some hustlers. They are some dogs, especially especially offensively. Their lineup is pretty nasty. So, they had that chip on their shoulder, and they went and they worked Portland when they got the opportunity, and they come up against us on Friday, and also kind of prove that, hey man, like we can keep it with a a top 15 team in the program comparatively in Gonzaga. So it was, and then heading, then we had to play Portland again. And I knew it was going to come down to us and USD on that final day of competition. Well, what I did not project was that one game would take as long as potentially the two games would have if we beat them in game one. But no, that game was crazy to watch because, the really cool thing about the Gonzaga's pitching rotation, their pitching staff in general, is how resilient their pitchers are. Like, yeah, they can get down in these holes and maybe, have a couple of runners on base, but they'll get out of an inning, or they'll give up like a really big crucial run, but they won't let it get to them too much, and they'll still they'll stop the bleeding really well. And then the offense really worked off that by then battling back and getting the Zags either back within contention or back with the lead. But USD was in the same boat. They were doing the same thing. Their pitchers, give a huge bomb to who was honestly like, there was an all tournament team that came out, and I could not believe that Cade McGee was left off that all tournament team. The man had 3 home runs. He was just lighting up every at bat. Was just electric. But he was like my all tournament player for Gonzaga, at least, because he always came up clutch too. And it was so fun to watch both teams just battle it out like that. I was exhausted by the end just watching it. So playing it, I can only imagine out there in Stockton. Must have been quite the endurance race, I would say, for both teams. But yeah, man, it's tough that Gonzaga kind of is heading into the NCAA tournament and the regional rounds off a loss. Maybe now that's the chip on their shoulder that they need to propel them to their first ever super regional. So, and it's what's really cool, I think, about it too, is now that the WCC has 2 teams in the tournament, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't seen that in a couple of years. So we know, and USD, we'll get into the tournament projections a little bit, but USD does not have an easy road, but either do we. So look out next weekend. Or this weekend, I should say. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Going right off that, the selection show just was, I believe, on Monday. And much like the NCAA tournament for basketball, there's a whole selection show. Top 16 seeds got to host. The Zags fell in the number 2 seed in the Blacksburg, Virginia region, which is hosted by Virginia Tech. Sort of interesting. A lot of people thought that the Zags would end up in Corvallis, Oregon. Instead, it's actually going to be USD. That's the WCC team representing in that region. But the Zags will play Friday, 10 a.m. on ESPN Plus. They're going to They're going to square off against Columbia. And then the winner of that game in that region will play either the winner of Virginia Tech or Wright State on Saturday. It's, of course, a double elimination tournament. So even one loss doesn't kill the Zags from moving on to the super regional. But yeah, very interesting draw here for the Zags in that region. We were kind of talking about Columbia before we started the show, and they're interesting season for them. They won 19 straight. I mean, they just absolutely ran through the Ivy League. It's their first NCAA regional appearance since 2018. And, they had 10 Lions were on the all Ivy League team. Their head coach, Brett Beretti, was coach of the year. Great season from them. And it will be interesting to see how their high powered offense matches up with the Zags rotation, who should be much more well rested going through that 3 days of WCC play was probably a war of attrition by the end of it, but it'll be interesting to see how they square off against one another.
Yeah, this Columbia team is definitely one that is reliant on their offense to kind of push them through games. And it was a formula that worked for, like you said, those 19 straight wins that they had, because they were kind of like a middling team for most of the beginning of the year and non-conference. And funny enough, their first conference opponent was Penn, who was like the number 2 team, kind of like them and Columbia kind of vacillated between 1 and 2 in the Ivy League for the entire season. And they lost, and Columbia lost that first series to Penn, and then went boom, 19 straight wins. I think lost a series to Dartmouth after that, and then had to win a playoff series against Penn finally to claim their title and claim an automatic bid, which they did. But yeah, on the backs of some really solid offense, they have some really solid hitters like Hayden Schott, who hit 331 this year with the team high, 11 home runs. Cole Hage, who's their first baseman, he's more of a contact guy, but 343 average, also 6 homers though. And they feature 6 bats in their lineup that hit above 300, hit above 300 this year. Now, again, that's against Ivy League pitching, which I don't think is the same as facing Gabe Hughes, Tristan Freeling, Kipner. These guys, like these are like top 5 MLB round picks this year in the amateur draft. So it's going to be a different look for them for sure. As far as who Columbia could throw out there on the bump, they're not like an amazing pitching team. They don't have quite like an ace like a lot of other programs in the tournament do. I've seen on Friday nights they're kind of prone to run out a combination of freshman pitcher Joe Sheets to start for like 4 innings, and then senior Sejan May, who seems to be the most consistent arm, to kind of close it out as a long relief guy. But they also have this sophomore named JD Ogden, who's pretty good. I think he has like a 3-pitch repertoire. I was watching a couple of his highlights, and he's just a good consistent pitcher. So whatever look the Zags get, we hope the bats stay hot, because that was the one thing from the WCC tournament is even though Gonzaga lost to USD inevitably, they put up 12 runs. Like that's really impressive, right? So like this is not a team that's lacking offense even in losses. So Columbia's gonna have to try to keep up with that. And facing something like Gabe Hughes, not going to be easy. So hopefully, that leads to a Gonzaga win, and then they'll face Virginia Tech probably, or Wright State might upset them. Who knows? But it's not going to be an easy regional to make it out of. But I actually think it might be a better one to make it out of than Corvallis, because I do think Oregon State is kind of a little bit of a Gonzaga kryptonite too. So and then also Vanderbilt's in that regional too. So that's a crazy regional.
Yeah, Corvallis has, like you said, Oregon State, who hosts 3 seed, New Mexico State they're going to play, and then Vanderbilt, and then USD. So, yeah, certainly there's no lack of talent in that region, but Zags, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that, Columbia offense, because obviously they were able to hold off USD for a portion of that. I'm not referring to the championship, but in that first tournament game, and it's for a team like Columbia, who, like you said, is 6 guys batting over 300, albeit against Ivy League pitchers. That's still a deep roster. Even down to their catcher Weston Everly, who he bats 5th most of the time, but he went 4 for 4 against Army in their last game. So certainly no lack of talent there. Their pitching, it's interesting how they roll out so many pitchers on the mound. Watching the Zags all year, it's we never really saw that. It was guys going 7 innings, and then maybe a closer for the final 2. But they did well in the tournament. They held Penn to only 1 run, or in those 3 games that Ivy League playoff series. The final 2 games, 2 runs, 1 run. Like for a Penn team that was offensively quite good as well. So I think this region is a good draw, just like you said, based on how Corvallis shaped out. And I think that was really the only other logical place to put the Zags in the tournament based on how the WCC tourney went. So, we're going to make sure to tune into that game. Like I said, 10 a.m., ESPN Plus, if you have it, watch it, wake up with the Zags. It should be a fun one, and we'll see how that goes. So.
Yes, sir. I'm excited. I love like the first weekend, like regional action of the college World Series is like that's like on dang near on the same level for me as the first weekend of March Madness. So I'm here for it. It's just regional baseball, and you just get to see some absolute dogs go at it. And I'm ready for it.
Yeah, this is where true Cinderellas and underdogs come out because it's baseball. I mean, anything can happen. It's the most sporadic sport of them all, where predictions and all that don't mean much. So be fun watch for sure. I think that was kind of
Yeah, we're at 25 minutes right now. So
yeah. I think that'll do it. But I'll do the outro. I have to clear my throat though. Oh, I was gonna choke. All right. All right. That's going to do it for us on this episode of the Bulldog Alley podcast, episode 5. Asher, it was great, talking with you once again, talking Gonzaga sports.
Sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep up with the action, guys, just like we will be. And we'll be back next week. Like always, go ahead and follow Gonzaga Nation SI on all the platforms, Twitter,